The year is 49 BC, the Roman Republic is nearing its final days. Julius Caesar has plunged the Roman Republic into civil war by refusing to relinquish his legions and by marching towards Rome with an army. Before this conflict, Caesar had spent the last 8 years in Gaul, subjugating and defeating various Gallic tribes. Throughout this time, Caesar had been in a political alliance with 2 other powerful members of the Roman Republic. This alliance was called the First Triumvirate. The First Triumvirate was created in 59 BC, between Julius Caesar, who was popular with the plebs, Crassus, who at the time was the richest man in Rome, and Pompey, known as one of the greatest Roman generals of his time. Their alliance enabled them to oppose the Senate, allowing the 3 to pass laws and legislations which became beneficial for the 3. Yet in 53 BC, Crassus, on campaign against the Parthians, was killed shortly after the Battle of Carrhae. With his death, the binding agent that kept Pompey and Caesar together was broken. Now, in 52 BC, Caesar had hoped to become consul again. Consul was the highest position in the Roman Republic, and there were normally 2. While Pompey himself was the sole consul in Rome at the time, the Senate, knowing that Caesar wanted to become consul again, ordered him to stand down his army in Gaul. Caesar was willing to comply to the demand, however he asked the Senate that Pompey should relinquish his military command also. The Senate refused to relinquish Pompey's military command and instead demanded that Caesar retire his military command despite the fact that Caesar's term had yet to expire. The back and forth between Caesar and the Senate lasted until 50 BC, with Caesar's term soon expiring. The Senate, led by Pompey, demanded Caesar return to Rome without his army and planned to bar him from standing for election. Fearing he would be persecuted and politically stripped of power, Caesar marched his army towards the Rubicon River in January 49 BC. The Rubicon is used traditionally as a symbol of the borders between Cisalpine Gaul and the Italian peninsula. The symbolism behind this is that crossing the Rubicon with an army is deemed illegal in Roman law. Thus, with Caesar crossing the river, civil war began. Yet early on, Caesar sought to end the civil war by allying with Pompey again and forming a second triumvirate. Yet Pompey refused and accused Caesar of being an enemy of the Republic. Pompey would only negotiate with Caesar if he disbanded his legions. With negotiations failing, Caesar began his pursuit of Pompey, who had fled to Greece with most of the Senate. With Caesar in Greece, he sent an army to the North African provinces to deal with forces loyal to Pompey. The army sent to North Africa was under the command of Gaius Scribanius Curo, who had been a supporter of both Pompey and Caesar, yet supported Caesar as he had paid his debts off. Curo's forces featured 4 legions and 500 cavalry, yet Curo only took 2 legions and the cavalry with him to North Africa, leaving the 2 remaining legions in Sicily. One of the potential reasons for Curo's decision to only take 2 legions was poor intel on the Pompeian troop numbers, and Curo's own decision to underestimate the North African governor stationed there, Publius Attius Varus. After landing at the Cape of Bon in early August 49 BC, Curo marched his legions north towards the town of Utia. Upon arriving at the outskirts of the town, Curo clashed with the forces of Varus, who were stationed at Utia. The 2 sides fought not far from the town, both sides having roughly the same amount of units, around 10,000 each, with legionnaires on both sides and supporting cavalry. The battle was fought between a valley. As the terrain was steep, neither side wanted to commit to crossing through the valley, so a brief standoff occurred. Eventually, Varus ordered his Numidian cavalry to advance. To counter the Numidian cavalry, Curo ordered his own cavalry to advance. As Curo's Roman cavalry was superior to the Numidians, the Numidian cavalry soon broke and fled back towards Varus's legionnaires, causing panic. Seeing this, Curo ordered his army to charge up towards Varus's main line, causing it to break and retreat back into the town, killing a few hundred men as they retreated. Feeling emboldened by his success, Curo ordered his men to advance to take the city. Yet, as his army was preparing to besiege the city, a messenger arrived with news that King Juba of Numidia, who had allied with Pompey some years ago before the civil war, was marching towards the city with a large army. Realising that he couldn't take the city while trying to fend off the approaching Numidian army, Curo ordered his men back towards their camp stationed near Castriel Cornelius. With the intelligence he received about the incoming Numidian army, Curo sent for his remaining legions based in Sicily to immediately come to North Africa and aid him. Curo's plan now was to hold his current position and await for his remaining troops to arrive. Yet while stationed, some alleged deserters from Varus's army brought news that King Juba of Numidia had diverted from his course to deal with either a border issue or a local revolt and was days away. The alleged deserters told Curo that the only Numidian force in the vicinity was a small band of men led by a Numidian commander called Subura. Feeling encouraged by this news, Curo ordered his cavalry to scout ahead and find the Numidian camp, while the rest of the army would march far behind the scouting party. The scouting party headed south from Curo's position and rode through all the night, eventually finding the Numidian camp near the Bagradas river. Now, in the early hours of the morning, Curo's cavalry attacked the camp. As the attack was a surprise to Numidian troops, they mounted little defence and were soon routed, with some managing to escape and some being captured by the Roman cavalry, while the rest were killed. Feeling bold from their apparent victory, the Roman cavalry rode back towards Curo's position, instead of holding their own position at the captured Numidian camp. Now rapidly riding back towards Curo, the Roman cavalry were exhausted by the time they reached him. Instead of berating his cavalry for leaving their position, Curo decided to question the prisoners about the location of the large Numidian force. After confirming from the prisoners that the Numidian force was commanded by Subura and not King Juba, Curo decided to force march his troops as he believed he only faced a small army. Yet, a lot of his troops were exhausted, and soon his cavalry, which had been riding for several miles, soon started to lag behind. On the opposite side, the Numidian commander Subura was camped 10 miles away from the first Numidian camp, which the Roman cavalry had come across earlier. Now knowing his advance party had been attacked, Subura sent word to King Juba, who was actually camped 6 miles away from Subura and had not been dealing with the border issue as Curo had been informed. Realising that the Roman army was rapidly advancing, King Juba sent most of his cavalry archers to assist Subura, while he advanced with the rest of his army north of the Bagradas river. Subura then devised a plan of feigning retreat when the Roman army was in sight. Curo's army soon reached Subura's position on the 24th of August 49 BC and attacked immediately upon seeing the Numidian forces. Curo's army outnumbered Subura's, but not by a large margin, as Subura's army was slowly being reinforced by troops sent by King Juba. The Romans still had about 10,000 men, mostly legionnaires, whereas Subura and King Juba's forces were mostly cavalry and a few thousand light infantry, numbering around the same as the Romans. As the battle began, Subura initiated his plan of feigning a retreat, slowly moving back towards King Juba's position. Seeing the Numidians retreating, Curo ordered his troops to charge further into the enemy's formation. Yet, As the Romans fought, the hot sun started to take its toll on them, causing fatigue, yet the Romans carried on the pursuit, but as soon as they came close to attacking the Numidian cavalry, the cavalry would retreat further back. Now seeing the Romans were exhausted, Subura ordered his cavalry to counterattack. The flat plains were the ideal battleground for the Numidian cavalry, yet the cohort showed why they were the best soldiers of the age, and despite being exhausted, still managed to push back the attacking Numidian cavalry. Yet, after fighting for a while, the Roman infantry just couldn't pursue anymore, with some simply collapsing from heat stroke or exhaustion. And soon, the Numidian cavalry started to circle around the Romans. Curo tried to maintain the discipline of his men, but yet again, as soon as the Romans came close to engaging the enemy, the Numidians would simply disengage, then harass and repeat. Eventually, the Roman line started to waver and break. Curo tried to rally what men he could back towards some hills nearby, in an effort to stage a defensive line and hold out for reinforcements. Seeing that the Romans were starting to break, Subura ordered his men to cut off the Roman retreat, causing the complete disintegration of the Roman line. With the Romans now broken and on the retreat, the battle turned into a slaughter, with some Romans being cut down, and some so exhausted they simply lay down and waited to die. Curo himself refused to give up and died fighting. The losses for Curo's army was huge. Nearly all of his army was killed alongside him, with only a few hundred escaping back to Rome, while Varus and the Numidians only lost a few hundred men. This loss for Caesar made North Africa a safe haven for Pompey's allies, as after Pompey's subsequent defeat at the Battle of Pharsalus in August 48 BC, many of his allies fled to North Africa to continue to oppose Caesar, until Caesar defeated them personally at the Battle of Thapsus in 46 BC.